Welcome everyone. This is the Legislative Review Committee meeting on Thursday, January 4th at 1 o'clock. We are in here and ready to get going today. So I'd like to see if we have a motion to approve the minutes from Thursday, December 7th. Go ahead.
I thought there was no question.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
I thought there was no question. Did we have a question?
Oh, did we have a question? That was,
I didn't want that on there.
okay. Discussion. Is there any discussion before we vote on this?
No.
No, we're good. All in favor?
Aye.
And no nays, so the minutes are approved. Okay. Moving on, do we have any public input here today? I do not think so. So I'm going to continue on to our topics of discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Manager Nikki Jones here to introduce our work for this first part of the meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. As we all know, we've been working on this for several months, and we made a lot of headway. And one of the biggest things that we've determined is, a name change going from neighborhood to residential, and really changing the focus and the focus of the policy to volumes and safety. Through that, we recommended a data-driven approach to this program. And with that data-driven approach, we've added criteria, weights for that criteria, gone through an exercise to kind of help you all understand what those weights might do to different segments of roads. And in talking about the segments of roads, we've also kind of briefly discussed the impact of this decision of creating a data-driven approach, what that might have on projects that are currently on the list that were created through CDO, I believe in May. We'll talk a little bit about that. But, on the agenda for today, one of the biggest things that we would like to see is possibly a vote on this RTMP. And if we had a favorable vote on the RTMP, I think the next step would be for us to go to the CDO to see what the ramifications of this vote would be on that CDO. On that CDO, there's some things that we might talk about, specifically projects that we're considering legacy projects that were not part of the CDO, trying to get a determination of what we might do with those. And if we have enough time, get to the self-funded policy discussion. So in the past, we've kind of talked about there's going to be this data-driven approach, which would be the opt-out approach, which is a government-funded approach, and then the opt-in or the voluntary approach would be where residents come to us with their own funding with this. So with that being said, Commissioner Myers, I know that you'd like to go through the current policy that's final, that's in front of y'all, and I think you've got some questions about that, and we're happy to go through that.
Right. I thought that we would go ahead and really have a goal of getting this voted on the policy and hopefully look at that CDO and the priority list. We also have on our agenda today examining the modifications to the Code of Ordinance related to the invasive species, and I know there are some people here for that. So I'd like to, be respectful of staff's time and make sure we have a little bit of time for that. At least I'd like to get through this part. I'm not sure that self-funded policy discussion will be complete today. Try to get through this in 30 to 45 minutes, and so that we can move on to the invasive species here. My first discussion for us here, we can go through two different ways. I have looked through the policy myself, and I have a couple of questions where things need to be clarified that aren't language or wording, but in terms of understanding and communication. And I don't know what our preference is to do this sort of section by section and say, are there any questions? I think perhaps that might be the easiest thing. And then my points will come up. So looking at the new policy, whether or not you're looking at the one that's grayed out or not, I'm going to join 1 and 2 together. And do we have any questions or concerns on Roman numeral 1 and 2, the policy statement and the program purpose? We're all good on that.
I appreciate the chair's patience in us waiting to see it together. And I really like the way it flows without the grade, but I first had to do the grade. So I really appreciate us seeing it as is.
Yeah,
This
the two things there. So I think,
One overarching question.
yeah,
To avoid bogging us down in minutia, can scrivener's edits or whatever just be made after without us?
yes,
having to-
I would like that the
So we don't
case.
have-
Anything that has to do with grammar, punctuation and such. There's some language things here that I was confused about the meaning of, that's different, but if it's for there. Okay, so moving on to background, the background section. I know I have a question, but I'll ask if anyone else has anything in the background section. Commissioner Thornton?
Yeah, I did, and this is not a question, but it's a observation. We added bicyclists, right? That was an addition.
Which on
My background.
AI
AI.
under background.
Yes, yeah, I think
We
that was,
added bicycle and then, vehicles.
and
that
other
was already
micromobility devices, right?
That was already there. So
Yeah.
my question is, or my suggestion is, I think since we added bicyclists, I think first of all, when you say vehicles, are we talking about motor vehicles? Is that clear to everybody?
Not necessarily. I think that this is important.
Okay.
I think it should be motor vehicles.
Okay.
And I think it should come before bicyclists, because that has been a new concept to us. And I'd like somebody to explain other what are the other
It's like
possible?
scooters and
Okay.
people who are on skateboards.
Okay.
Or, yeah,
All those odd things that we see people, the one-wheeled thing too.
yeah,
And we grasped that with, and that was an important point, I think Commissioner Poole made, was devices permitted by law, because it leaves it open for us and kept us from trying to list all of them.
yeah.
Well, my only suggestion would be that it should be motor vehicles. I think it should go after pedestrian and bicyclists and micro mobility by law.
Okay. Are we all good? Do we need to have a vote on that? We're all good with it? Let's just,
That sounds good.
okay, I think we're good on that. Anything else in this section? I think, yeah, Commissioner Allison, right.
So right under where we just talked about that on I, I'm looking at, A2I, and I was wondering if it would be clearer if we said, so see where it says roadway modifications
Yeah.
and geometric changes to avoid
Or
to provide for active transportation. Once I read that by itself, it seemed maybe are we really saying that we want a roadway modifications and geometric changes to provide for safer active transportation infrastructure?
Yes. I think so.
Is that's the intent, isn't
Yeah,
it? But
yeah.
it seems a little,
It is a broad, and as it's labeled, these are what we're saying, that these recommended solutions would fall under one of those three,
Yeah,
and they are broad. So we're calling them following broad categories. So this is really broad, not very
a
specific.
solution.
what facility are you talking about that's not an infrastructure?
Facility is an infrastructure.
Well, kind of in the space I'm learning,
Sure.
facilities are more to house, people are within. Where infrastructure to me is where people are moving
Infrastructure good.
around.
Transportation infrastructure?
It sounds more like
Right, like a place where you'd be
or a
parking.
hub.
Yeah. So we're gonna replace the word facilities with
I
infrastructure.
think that makes it read, and of course, I was also
That fine?
reading this as if it was somebody for the first time seeing it.
Ronnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I had separated those two, when I think speed controls, I'm thinking all the different types of devices you can put in, like speed humps, chicanes. When I look at II, roadway modifications, I'm thinking instead of a straight roadway, you might actually change the geometric shape of the road
Right.
to be like a curve or just slope it down that way. Whether it's through
Or bump
physically
out.
doing it or by doing with paint or something.
Yeah,
That would be the speed control devices.
okay.
What would the dragon teeth come under?
Mm.
They would be an infrastructure roadway modification.
Yeah,
Yes.
they would.
So that's what I'm thinking.
Replace facilities with infrastructure.
Yeah, is that okay with you all?
Yes.
If it covers,
Yep.
if it covers the solutions that you guys have in your mind,
Right.
it seems to me more appropriate than physically.
Commissioner Hull?
Yeah, I have a question. This is for this section, but it's kind of overarching.
So, but it's not,
Oh, it's not on this. I thought we just
Okay.
agreed on that.
yeah, I wanted to make sure we're agreed. And I just wanted to make sure that, as reading through the minutes last time, we went through and voted on each one. Are we okay with nods here, consensus? Okay. Commissioner Hull?
Unless dissent is voiced, it's consent.
Yeah.
I think this is a question for the attorneys. So last sentence of A says the recommended solutions resulting from this program should fall. And throughout this document, there's shalls and mays, which we usually have. Then there's also wills and coulds and shoulds and woulds. Should we be replacing all of them with shalls and mays? Does that matter, or can they just stand as they are?
I think it's up to your intent. If you want it to be very clear that this is a must, then I would change it to shall. If you feel like there could potentially be some sort of wiggle room that you want to account for, then maybe this should provide some potential for flexibility.
So should allows the flexibility.
Should but allow some potential flexibility.
Okay.
There's ideally that's what is going to happen, but it leaves open the idea that it may not. If you want it to be certain, then I would use shall.
So you're aligning must with shall
Correct.
and may with should.
I think may and should are actually slightly different, but
Okay.
yeah, the case law says that shall is must.
So does that have to be changed out through the whole document or just in the different areas?
I mean, this is fundamentally a policy document. This is an ordinance, so I don't think it's incredibly important. As long as you use must or shall,
Right.
then I think it's clear what the intent is, but should is different, and I would interpret it differently. So if you don't mean should, I would change it to shall.
Okay.
Okay. And we want should?
It seems
I
to
don't
me
say should.
that.
Yeah, I'm not really attached. It's more, I just wanted to kind
Okay,
of clarify,
okay.
we know where we're at.
Because
So-
it seems to me like there's other areas, like when we do the road audit, another option could come up, which leads me to think that shall is not as appropriate there as should.
So how does everybody here feel about, we'll change all of the wills and musts to shalls and all of the coulds to mays and leave the shoulds as they are?
Well,
I didn't
So
even
it's
cover,
just the
I didn't
same
even cover could in my inquiry.
Can we let the attorney's office and
Sure.
scriveners,
Or
that seems
At the discretion of the attorney.
right, to make that clear. Okay. I want to bring up number E on this section, confused me. Residential street, for this program, a residential street is maintained by ACC Gov. And then it says a GDOT classified local road that is adjacent to,
TJ Shelton.
okay, to RS or RM.
I see. It's,
So I don't know if this is, I don't know if this is just a parallel structure or, like, I'm confused by what's being meant here.
and is a GDOT classified road.
Okay, a residential street is maintained by ACC Gov or is, but and means it has to be both.
It has to be both classified as local and maintained by ACC Gov. Has to be both of those things.
Can I,
Okay,
should we capitalize local because we're defining local in the section before it in section B?
oh. And is a GDOT classified local road that's okay, that's better. Okay, that's fun. Once the is in there, it helps me out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Anything else in this section? Okay, if not, let's move on, keeping this on, which is the next section. I'm looking at both these with and without, is the program procedure and overview. That's, I do have one while we're getting there, and that's something that isn't clear to me. If we go down to the special note, and it says the last line, I'm reading the beginning of it, based on applicable traffic engineering principles, a traffic calming recommendation from the traffic engineer could still be considered if any of the following, but we'll leave that out. But the second one is cut through traffic 20% minimum. I would have no idea what that means. Do you mean that there's a minimum? Let's clarify the wording that what that means, because I don't know what it means. Is it
I can try and
20%?
explain it, and then you can tell me how to turn it into words.
Okay.
But, so if you look at the cars, the motor vehicles that are traveling through this road, if 20% of those or more don't live on that street and are cutting through, then that would flag it as an opportunity to be looked at with engineering judgment
20% or,
more.
okay.
Does that sound right? Correct.
I would be,
Where they live there.
Well, if I might answer that, we have books that are devoted to this trip generation manuals. So we know that if it's a single family resident, they will generate approximately 10 trips a day. So and then you add up the number of driveways or number of houses of the type of, well, if they're rentals or whatever, apartments, they all have different figures. And then we can generate an approximate number of automobiles that travel that road in a given day. And then over those numbers, that gives us the percentage.
okay, here's some wording. Just change it to 20% or more of traffic is cut through traffic. And then I would understand it. Thornton.
Tim, how often do your office like checks in on that? I mean, is it annually or is it every?
We
Or
don't.
as needed?
On an as requested, not necessarily an as requested basis, but it certainly, if someone within the government needs that information, we schedule the study and provide that.
So if a resident is complaining to me about all the cut through, then I could check in with you and, or they could check in with you?
We could give you an average amount of traffic that we should expect on that roadway based on the number of residents, and then we could come up with a percentage of cut through. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Are there any more from this section here on program procedure and overview? Okay,
Unless you bring it up like a few.
no. Okay, let's go on to then project prioritization.
I have some stuff on D.
On G, okay.
Oh, which one?
With project
No, we
prioritization,
just want to know. He said,
Oh.
did he say D or B?
B.
Okay.
He said
D, I said D.
Oh,
D.
good, clear that up. Staff? With the one that's above the chart. No, that's C. D is neighborhood notification and opt-out procedure, Avita.
Okay.
That's after the chart.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, yeah, I had a question here too. Okay, Commissioner Holt, could you?
Yeah, minor thing, I think we might do well to say, once the top projects are identified rather than chosen, to make clear that it's data-driven and not just someone deciding. But my main question is about this idea of being able to request a meeting. Who can make that request is a little unclear in this, I guess. Like, is it any one resident can request it? Does the commissioner have to request it? Does someone on staff, who's requesting it? And then I would assume that it's a staff meeting with impacted residents, but it might be good to specify that. And then the other kind of related question is around the timing. But maybe we can tackle that first question first. It's like, who's making the request? Are we assuming any resident can?
So in the old version of this, there was always, a champion, the neighborhood champion, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that for this, but that person was always one of the affected parcels. So we could easily say it would be somebody, would need to be either one of the affected parcel residents, or if the commissioner wanted to be that person, they could do that.
Residents or property owners, yes.
Yes, that's right.
And, I think what you're alluding to is the district commissioner. So I think that would also be a representative in my.
Okay, so could we just say upon the request of a resident property owner or an affected resident property owner or the district commissioner?
Yeah.
And so does staff feel comfortable with the idea that any one person can ask for this and then you all would do it?
From the mailed list, yes.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, so it says within 10 days of the mail out. Are we saying within 10 days of the mail out being sent or being received?
I would say being received. So we would know when these went out for distribution. But if you like for us to be more specific, I think it's warranted.
Yeah, I guess because when I read this, I thought like the day sent is the one that we know, the day received we don't. But if it's 10 days of sent, somebody might not really have time to actually get it and respond. So
Are we sending this stuff certified?
I don't think so we tried that for a while and it became extremely expensive. It was, I think for, what was the neighborhood that was ended up being about $6,000?
Forest Heights. And we just got one back today from Forest Heights,
How long ago?
April.
There you have it.
How do folks feel about us defining both of these as according to the day sent and then just making it longer than 10 days for that first one?
Within,
So within, I don't know.
Say 10 working days, and then that gives 2 weekends extra.
well, the question is how, if it gets like.
If it takes a week
If
to
it
get
takes
to
a
that
week to
front
get to
send.
my house, that's the part that we're uncertain about, how long it actually takes to get there.
And Postal Service is
I,
sometimes that bad.
Yes,
one
ma'am.
could be,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
So you don't think this April thing was on the other end?
Oh, we've got 3 stacks that tall that were delivered in the last 2 months that they never delivered them. We don't, the Postal Service couldn't tell where they've been all those months either.
Return to sender? That's a whole nother
certified mail,
isn't it?
correct?
That's certified mail.
All we want to do here is change this to like
Yeah.
within 14 days. You want 14 days?
But how-
mail out?
I would say 30.
I mean, I'm
Okay,
thinking.
yeah, why don't we say, can we change 10 to 30 and then
Yeah.
45, 45?
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
both
yeah.
define it
Yeah.
as.
Yeah, within 30 days, 30 days is fine. I don't
Mind boggling.
More is better.
That is
Um,
mind boggling.
and then-
30 days.
The last question I have here is just around kind of that wording of 2. I think I get what this means, but like, it was just kind of confusing. I'm imagining this was kind of edited in this, but it says, to gather signatures from 65% of property owners to opt out of traffic calming measures and delivered via email or in person. So,
We can change it to deliver them.
okay, so we're saying that after that 45 days after the mail is sent, you all have to have received from them, not they've sent it back to you. Is that what we're saying there?
I changed that to this made sense to me. They will have 45 days from the mailed notification to gather signatures from 65% of homeowners to opt out of the traffic calming measures and to deliver them via mail or in person to traffic engineering, blah, blah, blah.
Deliver signatures.
Did you write that? Or is that-
Yeah, that was my,
Oh,
that was my
okay, can we just
script.
use Carol's?
Yeah, that's,
So you're adding.
That makes it clear.
So
no, I just, well, it was signatures, but I used the pronoun to deliver signatures. That would be fine. I question whether or not the front end needed to be clarified again. Right, to deliver signatures, okay?
So if we're changing the 10 days to 30, shouldn't we change the 45, extend that to like 60 or something like that, or does it matter?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
It's a
definitely
different
so,
study.
because that's 45, that's the 30 days. I think we need to make that 60.
Okay, so 30 and 60. Fine with that.
Yeah,
That's all I have for the section, which I guess is the whole section.
yeah. Oh, and this might just be a procedural thing, and I don't know if it needs to go in here, but when these letters are sent out, do you automatically send something to the district commissioner so that when someone gets them and they call me, I'll know about it? Are you doing that?
We have not.
Does that
not
need to-
in all cases, but we.
Because in this case, since it's not neighborhood initiated, for some of them, it's gonna be a surprise and they're gonna call us. It'd be helpful if we knew what this was happening. So I don't know if you wanna put that, do we need to put that in the policy?
It'll be in our standard operating procedure.
Okay, good, that's great. Okay, so we got that. Now we're on to commission review and action and project implementation. I'm gonna say the rest of the document is 3 short paragraphs. I don't have anything on there. Does anyone else have anything?
The only other thing I wanted to say was to say agenda item in section 5,
Section 5, the agenda,
or an agenda item,
the second, okay. The second sentence will be agenda item.
and the third sentence. We have both.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Well, she didn't call.
Oh, yeah, she's made a motion. She doesn't need me to do. Motion to,
And I'll second. I
okay.
was trying to follow.
Yeah, we're good. No, I'm good. We check on each other, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, wonderful. How we do with our time there? Pretty good, huh? Okay, so now we're moving on to a discussion of 2, 3, and 4 are kind of connected,
They
aren't
are very good.
they? Okay, they're very connected, so
We do
good.
those next meeting so we can get on to or there are people.
Do you have do we want to put this forward with our, I think in our minutes, we had indicated that when we move this policy forward, we wanted to have some kind of idea of what was happening with the CDO and the remainder. So perhaps it's a clear, quick solution that they have for us and we could just move through this.
Hopefully this would be quick. I'm Ronnie Katrib, I'm the interim director for Public Works. I'll dive right into this. As you all know, the CDO approved what we used to call it, the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. There was a CDO put together and approved that since has moved forward into construction award. We are what we call it construction phase. This phase we are putting together our award package to the contractor, aligning a notice to proceed date to get those projects built for the permanent infrastructure. The first slide you see here is just a definition slide, so we can be all on the same page as we go forward on these slides. So under construction, when you see this is the roadway or a project neighborhood that is currently under contract with a notice to proceed. And I'm sorry, said January, I'm gonna say it's March, just because it's cold weather. We don't recommend those P tables to go in any sooner than March. And that was the advertisement in the contract. So that was an error on my part. Please accept our error there. On the blue is pilot, and to be determined, to be determined is really the cost for each of those projects and the number of facility or the type of facility, pilot temporary facility. Those were approved in the CDO, and there was a priority for both the permanent and pilot. The gray is legacy list. That's what we're calling it. In the legacy list, there is 8 roadway projects. The CDO did not include any direction on those on those list of roads, and therefore we're presenting to you today what is staff's recommendation about these legacy roadway lists.
And Ron, can I add a couple of comments here? So I've had to wrap my head around this whole concept and just kind of coming in pretty cold with it, and I appreciate staff helping me understand this. So yeah. There was a program prior to what we're doing right now that was not data driven. And in order to get on this list, residents, and I had to understand this, residents had to come to us and say, we want to be on the list. So they're therefore on this list. And the CDO created a prioritization of that list. And that's something that I didn't quite understand. So staff, thank you again for helping me understand that. And in that prioritization of the list, there is, the permanent infrastructure, and then there's temporary infrastructure. And what you're looking at as far as under construction would be the permanent infrastructure. And the pilot here is the temporary infrastructure. I'll just pass it back to you. I did not understand all that going into this.
Yes, so the CDO, the top 17 is what the CDO included. It had those blue pilot temporary listed first and in order, but the direction in the CDO was to install the permanent while thinking about and implementing a pilot program for the remaining blue shaded projects. You see at the bottom is the legacy list. These roads were requested. Requests came to staff. We scheduled meetings, and therefore some of these residents are expecting something to happen. Now, some of those roads, as you see the bottom 3, they're collectors. So we'll talk about them in the following slides. Again, this is the CDO. Now we rearranged it so it will make sense when you look at, okay, so what are you building first and what's going to be done next? So we're going to start with Arch Street and end with Grand Island Drive. In the meantime, we'll also be looking at temporary measures, location, more details, and a change order to the contractor that would go in front of Mayor and Commission for approval.
And Ronnie, the permanent infrastructure, i.e. the white boxes, they've been funded, correct?
Correct. And we have received a bid and we are in, and contract award was this week. So we'll be moving forward with notice to proceed in the next few weeks.
Now, what about the blue boxes, the pilot?
That is currently, yes. And so staff has been working internally with our subject matter experts to identify on each street what type of facility will go in. Of course, our staffing have changed, so we're working around that as well. But it's the intent that we will identify what needs to go there. And once we know, we go to the contractor, seek the pricing for it. And then we'll put that together and go to Mayor and Commission and ask for their approval for that funding and for that change order, I should say, to contract. Now, keep in mind, this is pilot. Staff are planning to go forward with a recommendation on the agenda with how long this pilot gonna go, how residents can opt out if they want to, because that's the policy you approved today, unless anything changes. And so they could opt out. So there will be a special kind of way to opt out now from all of those 7 projects in blue that you see today, but we call on them pilot. And the opt-out period, it's going to be different than the policy. We're going to give them a different timeline, just given how, honestly, we don't have enough information to tell you how long it's going to take to build all of them, and each one of them how long it's going to take. So it's a unknown territory, and we're exploring this as we go forward.
Yeah, Commissioner Thornton.
So, I'm looking at several of these, streets.
Number 7 probably is one you're looking at.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. But most of these areas look like apartment areas, not homeowners. I know that, Forest Heights, I know that's, look, well, maybe not. But will that present a problem for opting out? That's what I'm saying, whether it's the renter or the person that owns, that's what I'm headed.
It shouldn't be a problem.
It shouldn't be a problem.
So I think similar to this, the policy could be a resident, it could be the owner, or it could be the commissioner that starts the opt-out process.
Okay.
But we need 65%. Currently, we're looking at 65% of the residents who either own or live.
Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, and so when you come back with a timeline on what you studied to be the best solution in these for a pilot, now you're going to be building in that new opt-out at the end or with it, knowing that we won't know until that time goes.
That's right. We want to give that, I think it's going to look, that opt-out time period is going to be a lot longer than that end of the 60 days that we just voted on for the pilots. I think we want to give them more time to see this pilot stuff in place. It's going to be in place for 6 months, so maybe there's a 6-month opt-out period.
Okay, so I could flash back to Prince Avenue, back to the Dragon Teeth. This is a similar concept of making sure the pilot is tweaked in response to its immediate installation. And on that note, is it feasible logistically to be able to warn people when this is coming? Because that was part of the distaste for Prince Avenue.
Yes, and the plan is that we will notify those neighborhoods with what's upcoming, what has been decided, and let them know that an agenda is moving forward to Mayor Commission.
I guess what I'm talking about is like the digital display.
Traffic.
In these dates, installation of this, when we get to the point of installing it, and it's not just the residents, we got potentially 20% cut through people.
Sure.
That sort of.
Now, Tim has a little bit more information on the type of facility that's really being considered for those pilot, and we can dive more into this. I don't think we have anything like a Dragon Teeth type of pilot going in. We're talking about speed tables.
And maybe in some instances, some mini roundabouts or traffic circles.
So I guess maybe it'll end up, depending on the solution that comes forward, it might have its own strategy for
Public
educating
awareness.
the people who don't get something in the mail.
Right, and let me say that the message board idea is great. Looking at some of these, though, we have problems. We'd have to actually take up a lane of traffic to install one of those. So perhaps some signage in the neighborhood that traffic changes are coming. And
Right, yeah.
that's typically something that we do if we're gonna install an always stop or a new traffic
Yeah,
signal.
right.
And that's something that we'd be willing to do here.
Without me trying to, I guess my idea is to observe something and say what would be a solution for that. And that's what's great about being in committees, to learn already. You can think of the sign being that, and those would be installable, reusable, depending on which place. Okay, I appreciate you guys considering that.
So the white boxes have funding, and we're ready to move on those. The blue boxes
They
yet to
have,
have funding will have to come back to the mayor and commission.
Correct.
there's no funding on this
No.
yet.
There is
some
funding.
funding that's grabbed, but it's
Yeah.
not enough for.
They're not been approved to move forward. We only
Right.
have $100,000 for the CDO, but we believe that we should come back and present the true
Okay.
and the negotiated.
The true cost for that. But we don't have any, are you going to cover, like, pilot implies that there's a follow-up. So are you addressing that in a future slide?
Not today. So for the purpose of this meeting today, I just wanted to give you an idea of what's happening to the CDO because of the policy that you just enacted on today. Nothing is changing for what was approved in the CDO. This is moving forward.
Okay.
The policy approved today by this body or recommended by this body is not affecting the CDO.
That's what we wanted to convey, that the
Yeah, yeah.
CDO was direction to
Right,
staff.
right. But the implication here, and I haven't looked at the other lists you're getting to, let's say the Freeman Drive, for example, the implication is you're doing the pilot, you're not gonna come back and say, well, this pilot, we'd like to make this permanent, but it has to go through this whole process. This is gonna have some priority to become permanent, I would hope.
Yes, Commissioner. And,
Okay.
and just to make sure, I think you referenced to a study area start street. So just to make sure.
Oh, right, Fowler Drive, sorry.
I know there's
Yes,
many.
yeah, I know,
I
I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay.
apologize for that.
Please.
So we'll go to the next slide. And so here is the legacy list, and that warrant really some discussion.
This is
And
the one I'm interested in.
sure. And so there were 8 streets or projects left over from the studied 25 list of roads in 2022 and 2023. These are residents who came to us and they said, we want to be on your list. We began the process, and the process stalled somewhere in between the meeting with the residents up to getting 65% of consent on that request-based policy. Staff feel like all top 5, because they are local roads and qualify as a local residential road per the policy today and per the old policy, should stay on top of the future list or the new list of roads based on the criteria and the weights you've approved today on the new policy. So staff's recommendation is to maintain those 5 to be on top of the list moving forward, to be constructed after the pilot program. The rest are collectors, and these roads will be considered for future local road safety plans and will be included in our speed management toolkit efforts that we are currently working on, and we're hoping to get something in front of our elected officials this year.
I'm a little confused by that, and I don't have any connection to any of these roads. So let's pick one, Monty Drive. I do not even know where it is, anything about it, you know. So on Monty Drive, I'm the person who was upset about this. I contacted my commissioner. They got you guys to come out, and then I started getting 65%. But you know what? I got a lot going on. I did my house, the next house, and I didn't go it. But I still get to be at the top of the list, even though I only got 2 signatures and I didn't do more than just have my commissioner come out. Okay, here I am.
No, I think this is the conversation that we wanted to have. and
Yeah.
We do think it's important for a number of reasons. So these are folks who all came to us
Right.
asking to opt in,
Right.
okay? And we're kind of changing, well, not kind of.
But we didn't always agree with everyone. I mean, I've had.
Agreed.
Right.
So, that's why we want to have this conversation, because we definitely need the LRC's direction on this. Now, that being said, they came to us, they're on this list, and that was under the NTMP.
Yeah.
Today, here, we voted to move forward with the RTMP, a data-driven approach. If we go with a data-driven approach, these, on this list right here, these legacy segments will go way, way down.
But
Matter of fact, we won't get to them in the next 5 to 10 years.
let's say this one road here, just to finish my example, and I've only gotten one. Do I still have to get 65% before it actually is at the top? I mean, so I'm getting an advantage then? I think I should still have to get some, like, yeah, I've just had, I mean, I can know some people in my district who are, let's use a gentle word, who like to bring up issues, right? And are like, there's too much speeding in my neighborhood. And they came and you came out and said, yeah, it's a little dangerous here if you get 65%, and they didn't follow through, but they're gonna get, they don't have to go by the old policy either, or the new policy. They just have to have started the old policy, is that correct?
So
I don't know why this is getting me upset.
I would say that really, we really want to put this discussion away from staff and back to the commission.
Yeah,
because
that's what got me here.
It's a political question of.
And I will say this, I'll take you out of this. And it's funny you took Monty Drive, because it's in my district.
Yeah.
And Tim worked with me meeting after meeting.
Yeah.
About Monty Drive.
Okay.
We did the speed thing. He came out to Fowler Drive and met with residents. I am shocked that they are, if I would have even known, thought about it when we did the CDO, Monty Drive should have been on that list. Now, the other one.
And let me just clarify.
No, let me clarify.
Yeah, okay.
What I'm saying is that we know that the system before wasn't the best system. So I don't think that we're penalizing people who may not have checked in before. It just wasn't a good system. And I think that we're trying to start from scratch, start new, whiteboard, and move forward. So we didn't get it right before, but I do know, and Tim is sitting here, he's met with Penny Brightwell, who has turned this place out. And so that's why that stood out to me. Now, Freeman is also in my district, but I didn't hear the concerns like I hear with Monty, Kenwood, and not even Fowler, maybe the stop sign. We were trying to just get a four-way stop sign. We couldn't even get a four-way stop sign. So I'm saying that we're starting from scratch. This is.
Oh yeah. And I was saying, like, in that situation, in terms of my concern, I was like, oh, it sounds like there was a lot going on, pretty quick, but versus the person who had me out once over there. So yours, I'm just saying the all at one, giving yours sounds like a valid analysis of where it was in the process. And let's say that's good, but I'm just saying are there any on there where it was a very short process and there wasn't much involvement? That's all I'm saying. Well, no, they all had significant.
We had meetings with each group there. And just to pick one off the list, Providence Road, for example, we didn't hear anything out of Providence Road until about a month ago when someone called and said, hey, where are we? We sent the results to you. We never received those. And they supposedly got 65%, but we never received that.
Yeah. Commissioner Hoult.
So question for staff, and then thought noting that we're at 146 right now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and then my brain just blanks out. How many streets per year on average do you think you'd tackle once this program's in motion? If you had to estimate, I know it's hard to know, but assuming you get the funding you'd be requesting for and everything.
Right now, the funding source is all T-Plus 2023, and we get about $400,000 each, between 200 to 400. I can't remember. It's different each year. So, is that 5 to 7 neighborhoods a year?
It's less than we said. Yeah, it's less than that. It all depends. Each neighborhood's going to be different. Really, we can give you We can dive deeper into costs, once we have a list in front of us.
But in terms of staff capacity, do you have a rough estimate on like what's the minimum or maximum? you
Given
can
the
get through?
program where it sits today, this is going to a contractor, so we're not giving this to the paving contractor. It's gonna be to a separate contract. From a staffing perspective, we can handle up to 7 roads like we have on so this 10 roads actually we have in plus 17.
I would like
We're
to
dealing with today.
offer, just to clarify, because the CDO, I wrote, the streets that were prioritized in that CDO were based on how they ranked, according to a criteria that was not the same as, but very similar to the one that we've now adopted in this policy, just on the data. So there was, so that's who got into the pilot, right? So there were people who completed the process and they just moved forward in the CDO. It's worth noting that a bunch of those streets are very low on the priority list in terms of our data. But they already went through the process, so they're getting funded, right? So then we just picked the other streets that were in the top 10, which is how we got the 7 that are in the pilot. And then these 5 were lower than the top 10, however low they were. But since we're already funding a bunch of streets that navigated this process successfully, but are low priority, and we're really only talking about 5, which it sounds like is maybe 1 year. In my mind, why not just move forward with these, since we're also doing that with the other ones that navigated the process successfully, despite being low on the priority list, and then moving forward, clean slate, same for everyone.
But putting these on the pilot, are you suggesting moving them to have a pilot?
So essentially the ones that are already, can we go back one slide? All right, 1 through 10, those are the ones that successfully navigated the process.
Right.
Regardless of how high they would be on the priority list. If you look at your priority list, some of those are super low.
Right.
Then the blue 1 through 7, those were all in the top 10 on the priority list, but hadn't navigated the process.
But they'd started the process.
Yes, the same as what we're calling the legacy ones.
Okay.
So most of that 1 through 7 actually rank higher than most of the 10 in white, if that makes sense. At least according to the criteria that we were using at the time. That metric has changed a little bit, right? So if we're moving forward funding those 10, just because they navigated this process, even though a bunch of them rank low, in my mind, moving forward with what will essentially be a total of 12, right? The 7 in the pilot plus the 5 legacy, when more of those by percentage rank higher than the top 10, is a way forward that doesn't leave anybody feeling like they got unfairly left behind when they initiated. So that'd be my suggestion. Let's just move forward with all 12.
Are you making that a motion, Commissioner? Or does it need to be a motion?
I guess I'll defer to maybe Nikki. Do you need a motion that kind of clarifies how we want to do this? Okay. So I guess my other clarifying before I turn into a motion, and I guess I'll wait to make one until we hear from Commissioner Wright, is when you said the pilot's moving forward, if something's on that pilot list that would also be at the top of let's just do it list, are you just going to do it instead of going through the whole pilot thing?
They're not gonna, they are a pilot.
CDO in that direction.
And we gotta install the pilot program before we get to those 5. So that blue list is gonna go in first. It's gonna be completed first. It's gonna be studied to see their effectiveness and wait to hear from residents first before we move to do anything with the new list. We start planning, right? We start planning, engaging what we need to do with the facility, but we're not sending notification to anybody, even though they are on top of the list. We just need to get those 17 projects moving forward and get further direction from Mayor and Commission on what to do with the pilot if they are effective.
So I guess my thinking, last thought on this, that we can turn into a motion, if people agree, would be to direct staff to keep any pilots that prove successful at the top of the list and to move the 5 legacy projects to the top of the list. And once those are worked through, begin implementing the new policy database. That'd be my suggestion, if everybody agrees.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Can we go back to the beginning slide that talked about these three categories, the under construction, pilot, to be determined, and legacy,
Yeah.
now that we have seen the details of each
Yes.
one? And, Commissioner Hool, I like what you're summarizing there, but I wanted to see it in the summary first to make sure that it sounds like we want these three categories to keep going ahead of what we are moving out of this committee as the new way of doing it. And is that the kind of political decisions that you guys are saying that we need to prioritize so that you're not, and I think the legacy list almost works for all of these.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a similar thing happened when we had a GAP program. While the pedestrian and bicycle
Master plan was.
master plan was being done, we had $3 million and we had literally a gap in gap sidewalks. And so it kept going while the
Right.
new stuff was being studied. And I feel like this is real similar. Am I giving an analogy there?
That's right, same kind of transition period.
Yeah, and so these are all really the legacy, actually, they're the NTP legacy, and now we've got the R,
Yeah.
And so if they can keep being referred to as that, as we take this extensive learning we've done to the full merit commission, does this decision, which is hanging almost as a motion, does that have to go forward with the new policy to help explain what we're doing?
The white and the blue boxes, we already have clear direction on for the CDO.
Okay.
The legacy, what we're referring to as the legacy
Could we?
segments, we would love to have your direction. I think we need your direction.
So that when our policy that we already voted on today moves forward, it would be the package that you prefer is the motion, another motion comes on
This.
what to do with the gray legacy list.
Yeah.
So does that,
And also what to do with the pilot list after the pilot's completed, right?
That-
So you also, so.
Yeah.
So can I make a motion, Chair?
I'd like to ask one question, to clarify, or you do, because is the idea to put the legacy list and just expand the pilot list and do a pilot with why not add those to the pilot list, but then to the top list?
I think the pilot was kind of a stopgap to get us moving forward, but isn't the methodology that staff is going to use once they're done doing it for the things that were on that. It's just that they're doing it because we directed you already.
Okay, but how about this, answer this question. The ones on that blue list, they are,
Yes.
on this proposal that I think you're about to put forward, will the legacy list ones get completed with permanent stuff before the stuff on the pilot?
No, I would, no.
No,
Okay, that's fine.
we would not get there.
Okay, fine, I'm good.
It
Go for
may
it.
happen parallel, the work will happen parallel, but the permanent installation, I mean,
Okay, I'm
the
fine,
intent is to do the pilot first.
okay.
I'm going to do my best to make it concise.
Okay.
Motion.
Yeah.
So I move to advance the policy as modified, allowing for staff to make Scrivener edits. We accepted it.
We already accepted that already.
With the following additional recommendations. That the projects on the pilot list be kept at the top of the project priority list upon successful completion of the pilots. And that the projects on the legacy list remain at the top of the project priority list below the completed pilot projects.
under the neighborhood transportation
Does that work for everybody?
management program?
Under the,
Neighborhood
Go to the next slide
transportation management
to
program.
show that
Before that.
action.
Oh, sorry.
That, one more. Yeah. There you go. That's what, these are the 5 roads. On top of the ranked.
correct.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
but then the pilot ones upon completion,
They
go
are
from
on,
number 1.
they are on, yeah, they are.
They're hovering above,
Yes.
waiting
Yeah.
to trickle down.
Yes.
And to Commissioner Wright's point, post 5 are the end of the NTMP. completely.
So we're finished.
That's the end of
We're
the.
just finishing
Yeah.
that.
NTMP is over.
Legacy, that's the legacy list, the last of it. And then after that,
Is RTM.
if this passes, the rest of the full mayor and commission
And then the other 3 streets that are collectors, you're saying need to be handled to that
separately,
separate.
because they're collectors.
And I guess my only other request, doesn't have to be part of the motion, but we've heard from colleagues specific concern about the streets that are mentioned there. And we've been hearing that for years from residents and from colleagues. So I think it'd be helpful for the facts and issues in that agenda item to kind of clearly highlight not only like what those streets would be for this different program, but also maybe like point to that policy of that program so that those commissioners have a way forward. They know their way forward on those, if that makes sense.
I want to second the part.
Yes, yeah, let's, you're right, let's second that motion. Okay.
Second.
So do we all understand what it is?
Somebody seconded it.
I seconded the motion part.
You seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Hopefully you have what that is. And you also have what?
If anybody's got it, seriously.
Okay.
Staff will clarify the path forward for the 3 collector roads, in the facts and issues.
Yes, that would be very good. That's good. Okay, so we are now finished at this point with our residential traffic management section. We will I didn't finish. We will shift right now to the invasive species and return at a later point at our next meeting perhaps for the opt-in policy. Okay.
Do we need to wait till after the agenda cycle of these 2 things we just have passed out? What do you think? In case they kick it back to us?
Well, we'll find it. Our meeting will be after, yeah,
It's a question.
yeah.
I don't know that it matters. It'll be a very separate policy.
Okay.
So whatever y'all decide, I think we can tackle it separately.
Well, whatever, I think that whatever, I don't want to waste time on it
Totally.
until we get it approved. So maybe that next part comes after the agenda cycle,
Yes.
what we voted on today is what I'm asking.
Yes, I think so. And I think we probably want to give our invasive species staff a lot of attention now
I think,
and during our next meeting so that we can
and
really
all
give
the
them.
next meeting,
all
we'll
the
make
next
up for
meeting.
y'all being here at the last meeting and we got nothing.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Okay,
that.
great.
See you in a few months.
Yeah, see us in a few minutes.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
want to see it again.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Okay, we all take a deep breath and we go from roads to plants. This is like toddler talk. Roads, plants, animals. Come on up to the table. Invasive, right?
Table.
Okay, I'm gonna pass this, back to our Assistant Manager, Nikki Jones, to do a little intro to, invasive species, plant species and the ordinance we're working on here. We did not talk about this at our last meeting, so it's been since perhaps November, I guess. So it'll be a good reminder and a review, and staff, thank you for being here, and, please be patient with us as we shift from roads to plants.
Yes, so thanks to staff, and we've had additional time, and I appreciate that as well, for us to be able to talk through kind of where we see this heading and being able to provide some options for you moving forward. So just to remind everyone, the charge was to examine modifications to the Code of Ordinances related to invasive plant species. So we were thinking about that very specifically. And then we were specifically asked to look at bamboo and how the ordinance might mitigate bamboo specifically. As we've been talking about this, seemingly there are 2 key issues, right? There's a public nuisance issue, how invasive plants may impact neighbors. That seems to be one issue. And then there seems to be another issue related to, just the planting of new invasive species, right? So seemingly that was the easiest thing for us to kind of look at and help mitigate. So if we could move forward in this slide. Thank you. So thinking about this, one of the first things we needed to do was clarify what is meant by invasive plant. Because it was not super clear in the ordinance. It's not super clear in the ordinance today. So we put this definition in front of y'all before. We just want to put it in front of y'all again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And specifically in this definition, we call out category 1 alert, and category 2. And we've linked back to a very specific, Sherry, we talked about this, Sherry.
The Georgia Exotic Pest Plant Council.
Thank you, ma'am. Which is going to be updated automatically. So it's not staff going in and updating these categories yearly, every 5 years. It's just going to be updated automatically. So that is the definition we're moving forward with. No, that we recommend moving forward. And here, again, just a reminder of these categories: category 1, alert, and category 2. Here's what it would look like in the actual ordinance. It would be right under the definition of weeds. So after weeds, we'll go into what an invasive plant is. All right, so what can we do? We see 3 opportunities. We've talked about 3 opportunities with y'all. We've heard that education and outreach is something that y'all might want us to consider, and seemingly it's resonated with y'all. So moving forward, we think we can do a pretty good job of doing education and outreach. And we're doing some of it right now. The Sustainability Office is doing a great job. One of the things that I've asked the Sustainability Office to help us with is if the code enforcement officers are in fact asked to enforce this, they are going to need some information in their hands as they go to someone's house and give them a citation.
Yeah.
Or talk to them. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. But, you know, you can see here, there's a whole laundry list of things that we can do that we are currently doing as it relates to invasive plants.
I'm really glad to see your examples of the education piece, because UGA always does that plant sale, that big horticultural sale every
year.
Right? Every year,
Spring and fall.
spring and fall. So that would be a good opportunity to tap into.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm just still reading it.
Oh, okay.
We get both of the
Yes, well,
presentations.
this is really small, but yes, we can certainly give you
Pointers,
appreciation.
of course. And then again, when I was talking about partnerships, and if we were to be Archway community with UGA, they send an expert. Listen, I'm just
You saw that.
And then that could give us a just another partnership to align the outreach, because there's no sense in us recreating what they might be handing out, or just because we have to do it from all sides. The Banner Herald actually had an article. Did y'all see that, about 5 invasives? I'll send you the link to that, because they were pointing out yet more plants that I have that I should not be having.
So real quick, one of the things that we've already done is on the website under native plants view, Google Athens-Clarke County native plants.
Yeah.
We actually have, in cooperation developed through the botanical gardens, in cooperation with them, there are a list of native plants that are available for us in this area that are commercially available. So, and there's also on their website and ours, vendors who provide those. So we've already gone that direction on pushing native plants and helping people identify the list that could be planted in their yard.
That's good.
One of the other things that we thought we could do pretty immediately is just make sure that we don't have any invasive plants on our tree list in our ordinance. And we found one category 1 plant that was in our ordinance that we are planning to remove. In addition to that, there are a couple other ones that are kind of borderline, right? The Bradford pears is one of those. It's a category 3, but it's probably going to be on the category 1 or 2 list here in the next month, year. If that is the case and we adopt our definition of invasive plant, we'll automatically take it out.
Yeah.
So with anything like that. And then, one of the things that we need to talk about is conservation aspect of these trees. So just as a quick example, if I'm a developer and I have a 6-acre piece of property that I want to develop, let's just say I have to conserve 2 acres of it. And if I have to conserve 2 acres of it and I have a princess tree up there or on my property, does it count towards my tree canopy? Today, look at y'all, it does count.
If it's, yeah.
So, one thing that we might want to talk about is, do we want those to count towards the tree canopy?
Right.
Today they do. So let's just say we don't want them to count towards the tree canopy. What that would mean is that the developer would have to get a waiver to just not worry about that or plant additional trees.
Can we have them take it down?
So
Who identifies?
the arborist,
Credit or something?
they do get credit. They do get credit. So you can today they would get credit for the tree canopy if they had a princess tree on the 2 acres.
But let them remove it, still give them credit. Don't charge them for having to remove it. Ain't something bad.
Back to my question. If we don't let it count, that sounds like an easy one. Then they would have to plant something else to get their percentage.
Or they get a waiver.
Or they get a waiver. And could we say we'll grant the waiver if they take it down? Or,
I
can
don't
you
know
tie
how
it
those
to
waivers
an
work.
action?
How did those waivers work?
I think it would be rare that one tree puts them over or under, but if they had a cluster of them, certainly
Yeah.
that might come in.
And that, my understanding is the waiver comes to the discretion of the planning director
Okay.
and commission.
Okay.
And whether he gives the waiver or asks them to plant more trees.
And I do have on my notes that I do need to read the incredible minutes and details of October 5th and November 2nd to get fully caught back up.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking, I'm gonna have to review these. So without having done that yet, I'm remembering that the tree thing is the only thing we could do. We can't do the same thing with a patch of bamboo, right? That's why we're talking about the trees.
Well, we're going to get to that. Seemingly, the tree thing is something that's really easy for us to
Okay.
we have authority over it.
Okay.
And explicit authority over it.
Okay.
And to answer your question, can we ask them to remove those trees? I'm sure we probably could. What we would have to do is balance. So that's for y'all to discuss.
But
One of the things I was gonna mention is in looking for incentives, because it's a good thing to also, if we ask for removal to provide an incentive. If they remove the tree, there may be a way to incentivize not requiring them necessarily to plant back a tree, but to allow for native habitat in that area and allow the native trees to come back, so that you can limit again a infestation from the non-native tree, encourage the native tree growth, at the same time provide an incentive for them to remove it. So we try to look for incentives for people to do the right thing.
yeah,
I didn't weigh that at all.
The other side of this might be that the development community comes to y'all. Talks about the additional cost that's being placed upon them, and
you can picture it, can't you?
That's gonna mean, we're talking about affordable housing, any expense that we incur on a developer is going to increase the value of the house, or when they sell the house. It's
Right, the
going to
cost.
increase their cost of building. So anything that we make that's more expensive is gonna be counterproductive on affordable housing. So I think there needs to be some kind of credit or something to offset that. And how many of these are there? I mean, is this a big?
Varies by site.
Street, so, I mean, when you're looking at the trees, when we're looking at tree canopy and the issues really in the ordinances related to tree canopy and conservation in our planning and the tree ordinance and clearing, what can be cleared and how much % canopy they have to clear to maintain. I do not believe from a tree canopy point of view, from an overstory, mid-story tree canopy point, there we don't have like solid, we're not in a situation where we're like in Southwest Florida, where we have a solid canopy of Melaleuca trees. So where it would be like the whole canopy is an invasive category 1 that we're saying, oh, you can't count. So I don't realistically, and even with Bradford pears, we have not, there are areas very close to us geographically that yes, that would be a huge deal, but we aren't there yet. And so I can't, Sherry might help me. I can't think of a tree species that's gonna be a whole, like that's gonna make such an impact on canopy cover as it pertains to development and planning that it will be a big deal. Now, if you get down into like ground cover and shrubs and that, then that's a larger issue. But like tree species wise, like the only one in my top of my head that would have the potential to do really would be Bradford pear, and even princess tree. Like they spread, but like they're not spreading in like I can't think of any solid forest of those. So I don't foresee in the relation to developers and clearing for affordable housing and for developments. And I think we're looking at like they're more looking at like, well, what do I have to do just to hit my bare minimum? And they like, okay, one more tree. That's great. Like, hey, I'll take that tree out because that's one less tree that I have to work around because that's one more tree I can use to take out. So I don't foresee that. I mean, I know like me saying I don't foresee that isn't hard facts, but like in all honesty, like from a tree canopy point of view, I think maybe that's not as I don't think it's going to become that large of an issue.
Commissioner Hall and then Commissioner Wright.
I know he left, so maybe no one can really speak for him, but is anybody aware of thoughts to this specific issue that Brad Griffin might have? Because he's the one who's dealing with those applications all the time.
As a former planning director, I might be able to speak to that. Brad, I'm sure, would be very sensitive to the development community, because that's what the planning department does specifically. However, I've talked to Brad and I've talked to the sustainability folks. And what we have here is really, it's not a rub, but there are two values, right? There's our value of sustainability here in Athens that is just rampant amongst our residents, which is fantastic. Then there's also this value of, trying to reduce cost of housing. We don't know how all these things are going to play out. Now, I bring this up because I think it's important that, we might think about conservation of an invasive tree. So, if we're saying that we're giving credit for an invasive tree, maybe we should. Right? Are we saying, though, that they should take that out? Or are we saying they should plant another tree? Like, the follow-on to that, I think, is the question.
Commissioner Wright? Or Jesse, were you done? I thought.
Okay.
I just wanted to kind of see if we had that.
Yeah, well, in that note of, one quick question, is that a riparian buffer loving tree?
The princess tree, it's not necessarily a riparian tree. Could it be found within a riparian buffer somewhere in the county? Absolutely, yeah. But it's not something that has to be in a riparian zone.
Because what I'm thinking is, if we went with this easy approach, it doesn't count to the canopy. It seems to me with the other criteria, percentage of permeability, percentage of site, logistical terrain development, and tree canopy needs, and riparian buffer, or whether over the power lines and all that, it would be that if this doesn't count for their canopy, it is right to be gone ahead and taken down. I mean, it seems to me that would be their follow through with it. And then whether they needed a tree canopy waiver, it seems that maybe would we want to develop something that had a specific really related to invasive category 1.
So on a 2-acre site, if they had 15 Bradford pears or princess trees, we would ask the developer to go into all the 2-acre, tear down those, take out those trees.
No, I'm saying that if it doesn't count towards their canopy, in my mind, I'm thinking they would probably need that space for something else. Just a decision of theirs.
Yeah.
I'm complicating it. I'm
No,
thinking
no,
that
no, no.
with the other criteria they have to deal with, they might be thinking if that Bradford pear, when it becomes a category 1, or this, if it's not counting towards my tree canopy, I'm not sure if I'm gonna get a waiver on my tree canopy. I'll use that space, take it down and use that space for my development. Because we would like it to be taken down.
And Mike, you've been in Athens long enough. I just want to make sure I'm explaining this correctly. So if there's a 6 acre site, we have to set aside for our code 2 acre, whatever, a percentage of a piece of property, and it's probably heavily wooded, hopefully, right, for conservation. So there are trees within this heavily wooded area that could be invasive, Princess, Bradford pear. Are we saying that possibly we want them to go in this wooded area and just take these trees out?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The canopy could be counted as their canopy, even though it's speckled with the canopy. I hear what you're saying there.
I was just, sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that one of the things to keep in mind is there are a lot of options associated with what, you don't go in and actually tear the tree out. And I'm not picking on language, but it does tend to envision, you pull it out by the roots. You have a lot of options. One of your options, if your land's big enough, if say it's an acre and you found one toward the center, you just simply girdle that tree, treat it with it, and you let it become habitat. You don't literally have to take the tree down. There are other options. Bradford pears don't get that tall. I want to say, 30 or 40 feet at most. Even if you just cut it and drop it, so you chainsaw it, you drop it on the ground and you spray herbicide on the trunk. It's really, you're talking about a very small, compared to the construction cost, a very small expenditure. You're not trying to chip it in place. You're not trying to mow. So you do have these other options for a lot of ways to treat things that don't involve a major expense.
Go.
Can I clarify
Yeah.
on just some clarification? So when we're talking canopy percentages and everything, so maybe some underlying information on the tree species that we're talking about, since we're focusing on trees in this conversation. So most of these non-native invasive trees that are the subject of our conversation, they are invasive because they're really good at taking advantage of disturbance. Okay. So where you're going to find a solid grove of princess tree, in most cases, now there's always outliers, like there's going to be one scattered here and there, but in most cases, there are going to be areas that were very recently and previously disturbed, clear cut, were field. Bradford pear will come in and volunteer in an agricultural field that has been left, right? So those areas on your site development are the areas that you're going to be clearing to put your houses on initially. And the canopy cover, the true intent, whether it comes out in the wash or not, like our true intent of our tree canopy policy and our tree should be to protect and maintain canopy cover of those high quality forested areas, like our oak hickory forested areas, and most of those, in all honesty, are on slopes that haven't been cleared because they were too hard to actually develop. So in practice, with trees at least, and that's what we are focused on, I don't see there being a lot of conflict. Now, if you have a 20, and also there's different, and this is where I fail in that I don't know all the percent for the RS zones and things like that, like the residential and the zoning areas. But like, if you're developing out a development, you have like a 20, depending on the size of the lots, you have like a 20% canopy cover you have to maintain, or a certain percentage you have to maintain. And there's a per lot, and even that right now is being reconsidered, right? Correct? And so you might be a scattered Polonia tree in your forest, but I think that's not going to come into a point where like it's costing anymore, because if you have a solid stand of those nasty tree species, it's probably where you're going to want to clear, because it's probably the most disturbed, the flattest, was cleared land. It's not on a slope. It's not in your riparian area. There might be scattered ones in there, and like you may not want someone to go into like some of those scatters and pull them out. So I think like in practice, I don't know that it's a huge conflict because of the nature of where at least trees that where they'll be found.
Commissioner Poole?
I know sometimes we go over, but I will have to leave promptly at 2:30 because of childcare responsibilities. But if the question before us is kind of, what do we do with these three things? I'll just share my thoughts is, I think we should specifically prohibit the planting of any of them, by developers. And I think that we should remove any of them as counting toward canopy. I think requiring the removal in conserved areas is probably more onerous on developers than we want to be. Maybe I need to know more about how this girdling thing could work, but I do wonder if there's a way to have language that would require they remove them from any areas that are not part of, because usually the conserved canopy is like a zone, right? And thinking about how they're likely to show up in the disturbed areas, requiring that they remove them in any areas that are not part of the conserved canopy. So if as they're building, these things volunteer, they're gonna yank them up since they're there anyway. And since they're literally growing there because of the work they're doing and not on their own, so.
Thank you.
Right, substitute
Thank you.
tree for remove.
I want to ask a tree question here because I am looking at this, I don't know, 20 acres. It's over an old Lexington Road that's about to be developed. And I may be wrong, but right now it is lined with with what looks to me like Bradford pears. Let's just imagine it is. And that's around the corner from where I am. It's along a sidewalk. They provide shade. Are we considering a policy that would require that this developer take out those Bradford trees, which are the only shade along that quarter of a mile?
That is the question at hand.
But that's what I want. I mean, I'm asking you to make sure I understand that.
What we were recommending is it doesn't count toward any conserve, so you don't get credit for having them. And we were trying to look at ways to create incentives to do that.
So I guess I'm saying, is that irrelevant? Like if I would imagine, because people bring things up, let's just imagine the trees downtown. I mean, how many people have heard from people like, oh, it's so bad that they got the trees had to come down. I mean, there was a lot more going on underground and everything else. But in this case, where you're talking about the heat of the summer, any kind of walking, shade, and we're talking about taking away shade for the next, 10, 15 years till something goes in there, on a common sense, forget about invasive species for a minute, on a common sense thing, I'm like, I don't want those trees removed. Am I just a loner on this one? What?
I have a question. I didn't think that we had a tree canopy policy for residential.
Yeah, this is like 20 acres of development.
So when somebody cuts all the trees down in their yard.
So that's
That's the yeah.
are you talking about for new residential?
Yeah.
Or existing residential?
We don't have a canopy conservation on existing.
Yeah.
No.
It's, okay, so that's the other can of worms there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Versus the existing. And so what I would say is if that's 20 acres of trees.
No, it's not. It's just along it's landscaping along the front of the property.
I'm just saying it's a 20-acre thing.
Yeah.
Those could stay and not count for the canopy and them still have trees.
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner, I should have clarified that when we're talking about new development here, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
In this case, this property doesn't
Again, I
have a
didn't
lot
read
of
my
trees. It's
minutes.
a field. So that's what I'm saying. It has a field, so it's not like it can use other stuff. So if this doesn't count, I'm just bringing that up to understand how the policy would impact.
I think that they would do the map, the collective map, they would be planting, the project development site would have the percentage of canopy.
Right, but I'm just bringing up the question about, in this case, is the value of having shade along there more important than cutting down those trees? That's all.
Yeah.
And whether or not this would bring approach that.
A couple things to speak to that. I agree with you on, so where does the value of shade and heat and where does that lie? So I think then you have the option to, so I guess another thing is I would need to clarify on our planning and its developments. Like, I think there's a separation between street trees and canopy. I think there is already that distinction, and like your canopy cover percentage for your development is different than street trees.
How about we have that for next meeting?
Oh, yeah, but I just wanted to bring it up.
I think that would be separate.
That would be part of your impervious.
Yeah.
That would be included in your.
Permeability.
Yeah, permeability.
And I
If it's not
also-
paving.
Yeah, and also
Right,
looking
but
forward, like Bradford pears are not a tree that want to encourage to, like, if they're there in a street tree shade,
Yeah.
like leave, but it is a known fact with that tree that you get ice storms, they
It's
will leave the
hazardous.
trees that will
Yeah.
come down
Report
on your
last year.
sidewalk and everything. And so they would be something we would want to incentivize that over time they be replaced
Oh,
with
yeah.
a different tree. So already, but I do think there's a separation in and like I said, that's where Brad can speak to that or Wick.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll learn more.
Commissioner Hall, one more question and then we'll.
Yeah, I just want to understand the genesis of this list, because there's 4 categories, right? Is this the only thing that showed up on our list on any of those 4 categories, or the only,
Just category.
only thing in category 1?
So the definition speaks to category 1, category 1 alert, and category 2.
Uh-huh.
So there is something that was here before that I think you've shown in the past was a Bradford pear, which is a category 3.
Yeah.
And then there's something,
Graduate.
there's a sawtooth that's a category 3.
That we allow people to plant as predatory canopy. That's a
Credit orchard canopy is the Bradford pear.
Yeah, okay. So, I guess I will just share also that in my mind, anything that we're giving credit for, or that we're saying, go ahead and plant this on purpose, shouldn't be anywhere on the list, is my thinking.
On category 1 alert, or 2.
Or 3, or, I mean, because 3 and 4 eventually become 2 and 1 if enough of them are planted, right?
No. Usually.
Yeah, so I guess my thinking is not necessarily with regards to sending people out to have to remove them, but just in terms of what credits are we giving people for keeping them or planting them intentionally. In my mind, we would want anything on any of the category 1 through 4 to not be things that you can plant on purpose to get credit for, and to not be things that count toward your conserved canopy. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily go out and remove all that category 3 and 4 stuff.
You want to change the definition of invasive plants?
Yeah, I thought I had indicated that in a past
We've got
meeting.
Bradford pear in the invasive.
But
School did indicate that. I don't know if there was consensus.
Right, we didn't,
We
right.
just discussed
The
it.
pros and cons. I need to know the cons.
So I guess I'm just sharing that in my mind, for the purposes of credit for canopy and for the purposes of we're greenlighting you to go plant this on purpose, we should be adding, there shouldn't be anything on that list that's anywhere on categories 1 through 4.
We're not greenlighting Bradford pear since category 3. And I don't think we're really greenlighting sawtooths, but it says limited and I don't know what limited means.
And these things were like.
So let's have you address this on our next meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, a motion to adjourn. We'll follow up. Please, make a note of that and we'll do. Like a second. All in favor?
I think we could spit and then just email on.
And
Share.
that's what's real cool. If y'all have Google, if you take a picture of a plant, that little eye,
I'm spitting on
poke that, it will help you identify that plant.
Yeah.